Global perspective is a comprehensive lens through which you see the world around you, or a mental view or outlook. Also, it shapes us to perceive and understand our own identity of people we interact with. Different perspective on a globalized world. First is education. Because of global education, it allows students to realize that the world is connected through many ways, including technology, environmental issues, and even education. Also, through global perspective, schools could prepare students for problems or even job opportunity in the real world. Next is economic, cultural, political, and environmental influences. Because of different perspective, it increases our understanding on that. Also, it develops the skills, attitudes, and values which enable people to work together to bring about change and take control of our own lives.
Welcome to Global Perspectives, an introductory course in sociology. Do you ever wonder how our society influences us? What our role in the society is? How we, as individuals and groups, are shaping and are shaped by our environments? How political, economic, and cultural institutions and organizations affect our behaviors and those of others? What global factors affect our immediate and national environments? These are some of the questions that sociologists have been exploring for quite some time. Sociology provides new ways of looking at the world through the exploration of the organization of society and the connections between people and their surroundings. In this course, you will learn key sociological concepts and theories that are essential to understanding our increasingly globalized world. Globalization is defined as the intercontinental circulation of economic, political, and cultural structures, processes, and products. In this course, we discuss historical and contemporary events and policies that contribute to globalization and how these affect and connect the lives of individuals and groups around the globe. We pay particular attention to migration, the movement of people between local, national, and international regions. Why do people move from place to place? What drives people away from their homes and places of birth, and what draws them to other destinations? What do these movements suggest about the relationship between place and identity? To answer some of these questions, we focus on aspects of the Canadian immigration. For example, we explore national immigration trends and patterns over time. We also consider political and economic factors that influence Canadian immigration and the relationship between these factors and people's varied interpretations of Canada's national multicultural identity. Through course lessons, activities, and assignments, you will be able to analyze the role of sociology as a way of seeing connections between global factors and immediate realities. Let's get started.
When is access cheap enough to connect the world? Global ICT access, how much? Let's ask first question, how should we price it? For example, you're working and say to your boss, a good idea that suggests to price it $100 per hour. And you agree, what do you say? Is $100 a good price to provide digital access for everybody in the world or not? We can go very specific. We can go very specific about it. First of all, we must determine how much people earn in the world. Second, we have to know the percentage average people spend on ICT or internet. Especially there are things they need to spend for. And we say, is $100 enough or too much or too little to provide access in the world? Let's say people earn $5,000 per month. That if you got a good job. How about you earn a minimum wage? Let's say you earn below 1,500 per month. A global average income is less than 100,000. Let's say people earn $5,000 per month. That if you got a good job. How about if you earn a minimum wage? Let's say you earn below 1,500 per month. And global average income is less than $1,000 per month. How is this distributed? For example, how many people in the world that percentage?
Go.
And global average income is less than $100 per month. How it distributed? For example, how many people in the world? What percentage of the world population do live in $2 per day? That's $60 per month. It's 40% live or less than 2% $2 a day, and 20% of people of the world live less than $1 per day. Let's go to the second question. How much do people spend on the internet? How much do you spend? How much your total phone bill or internet connection? Probably a broadband connection. Some people might spend $80 per month or $40. It might be more, it might be less. Go back to the example, your boss. Is your $100 a little bit too expensive? Maybe you should lower the price. And if not possible, we provide solution to connect everybody because there are 20% of people live in poverty that can afford to spend on internet connection. Can we end global poverty by tomorrow? How many people are still living in extreme poverty? Let's start with the good news that percentage of the world population living in extreme poverty has been falling for almost 2 centuries from now. In 1920s, 84% of the world population lived in extreme poverty. By 1981, this was falling to 44%. And last year, it finally dropped by below 10%. Having a basic understanding about the orders of magnitude of global cities. Having a basic understanding about the orders of magnitude of global cities is extremely useful because it allows you to respond to globalization and global human development. For example, somebody comes around and say, let's end global poverty by tomorrow. It is possible. How do we have the money? It's technically.
Go.
For example, somebody comes around you and say, let's end global poverty by tomorrow. It is possible. Do you have money? It's technically absolutely possible that we do have money to end global poverty by tomorrow if we want to. Let's start with the first question. How many people are there in the world? Let's take the reference in 2015. There are about 7 billion people in the world, and World Bank tells us that 20% of them are live under $1 per day. So 7 billion people, in 20% of them, that's 1/4 billion people.
Go.
Then another 20%. So if we would live people live simple, if we live another 1.4 billion, that will be 1.4 billion plus 1 per billion times 365 days in a year. It's around 1,000 billion a dollar.
Go.
It will not work. Instead, you will invest into educational and healthcare in developing country.
Go.
There are famous proposal from the economists from Tobin nowadays known as Tobin tax. The idea is simple. Each currency exchange into small tax will be live with, let's say, 2 small tax will be live with, let's say, 0.5% of volume transaction, and it make big bubbles in exchange to market. So instead, let's give half of percent tax to them. How it would even 10 times less than not 0.5% but 0.05%. And if we collect that, we invest into education and healthcare, we could end global poverty by tomorrow.
fundamental difference between left-wing and right-wing ideologies center around the rights of individual versus the power of the government. Left-wing beliefs are liberal in that they believe society is best served with an expanded role for the government. People on the right believe that the best outcome for society is achieved when individual rights and civil liberties are paramount and the role, and especially the power of the government, is minimized. Examples of an expanded role for the government include entitlement programs such as Social Security and Medicare, Medicaid, universal health care, food stamps, free public education, and unemployment benefits, strong environmental laws, and other regulations on industries. Right-wing ideology would favor market-based solutions to the issues that these government programs aim to tackle. For example, encouraging a free marketplace for healthcare, driven by consumer choice to drive down costs, or privately held retirement accounts like 401k plans instead of government guaranteed social
This video
security.
intends to clear up some ridiculous misconceptions about the political axis. The difference between left and right is the size of government. The bigger the government gets, then the further left you go until you reach totalitarianism, which is total government. Under totalitarianism, everything, whether it be the means of production, property, or life itself, is all owned by the government. As you move right on the scale, government gets smaller until you finally end up with no government whatsoever, which is called anarchy. Now, people have somehow managed to convince themselves that anarchy is left-wing. But if you remove government altogether, which is what anarchy is, then non-existence is obviously the smallest government can possibly get, which can't be anything other than right-winged. The major cornerstone of where you are on the political axis is ownership over the means of production. The means of production are whatever is used to produce the goods that we all use in life. For example, the car you drive requires a factory and raw materials to assemble. The means of production can either be owned by the government, meaning the government would own the factory, or they can be owned by private individuals, meaning a businessman owns the factory. Self-ownership is another cornerstone of the political spectrum. All the way on the right is a government that maximizes personal individual choice and freedom. The further left you go, the more onerous government gets. Somebody living under a totalitarian state may be jailed for speaking their mind, or have their possessions confiscated, or their income stolen for violating the state's many edicts. So in short, the further left you go, the more onerous government gets over everything. And the further right you go, the more freedom is maximized until you end up with no rules at all, or anarchy. If we start on the left, we have communism. Communism is when the government owns the means of production and property. So all property is owned by the government. So under communism, you cannot buy a car and proclaim that the car belongs to you. The car would in fact belong to the state. A notch to the right, you have socialism. Socialism is government ownership over the means of production only. Under socialism, citizens are allowed to own property, but cannot own a factory or other means of producing goods. The means of production is owned by the state. Next, we have another one that people often get mixed up. A notch to the right of socialism is fascism. Fascism is private ownership over the means of production, but with government control, often referred to as state-run capitalism. Under fascism, the government can control businessmen's use of the means of production through a regulatory apparatus. Under fascism, businesses strive to maintain a close relationship with government through lobbying or funding of political campaigns. in an effort to get preferential treatment, whether it be through subsidies or unfair regulations levied on competition. You have to go a long way to the right of fascism to get to the next ism, and that's libertarianism, which in my view is really just capitalism. Libertarianism allows all property to be privately owned, whether it be the means of production or the house you live in. Libertarianism has a government, although limited in power. A libertarian government can have a court system, police force, public roads, etc., but economic activity is controlled by the free will of the individuals that make up society. Under libertarianism, individuals are responsible for their own success or failure and cannot look to the state for special privileges to make up for their own shortfalls or poor decision making. There cannot be subsidies for businesses or special rights granted through lobbying because picking winners and losers is incompatible with the concept of a small government. Finally, all the way to the right you have anarchy, which is the complete abolition of government altogether. Under anarchy, all economic activity is controlled by individuals and there are no laws governing the behavior of individuals at all. Anarchy is the smallest government possible because there is no government and is defined as a state of disorder due to the absence of a recognizable authority. The further to the left you go, the more brutality you get. Totalitarian governments attempt to run the economy and need to move forward with their plans for society. For this reason, totalitarian states cannot allow the citizens to make their own decisions or run their own lives, because this will inevitably interfere with the state's plan. Totalitarian governments must get their citizens to behave in accordance with their plans, and the only way to get individuals to behave in such cohesiveness is through force, aka brutality. When it comes to totalitarianism, it doesn't matter if you have a nice dictator, because the only way for the government to move forward with its plans is to threaten their citizens with not so nice consequences for disobeying them. The further to the right on the political scale you move, the less centrally planned the economy is, and therefore the more free the people can be. So in a nutshell, the further left you move on the political axis, the bigger government gets. It puts more controls on individual behavior and the economy. The further to the right you move, the smaller government gets. There are less controls on individual behavior and the economy. I hope you learned something from this video. Please post it on Facebook or your blog and subscribe to my channel.